All right, we got building a startup in 500 days, day 235. So I just finished adding the ability to mute users in your feed. This was something I hadn't really even been thinking about, but over the past few days, there have been a lot of records entering the feed, which is great. I mean, it's kind of a good problem to have. Nothing that's been too out of control yet, but just kind of got us thinking that we should probably have some kind of way to mute users so that if you see something you don't vibe with, you can just move along with your life. So I actually thought about that today and implemented it just now, which I was kind of proud of myself for figuring that out. So yeah, it's not live yet. I'll probably put it live tomorrow. And in addition to putting that live tomorrow, the other thing I did today too is I added a second notification for late night. So right now users get a notification at 6, but I added in another one today at 10 if they have not documented yet. And the idea here is that I've actually had a few people hit me up being like, oh, like I totally forgot to document like anything you can do or whatever, just because they'll lose their streak even though they did do stuff that day. So ideally, if we put another notification, one, it will help for that use case so people don't have to be bummed if they just spaced documenting if they were busy when the first notification came out. But two, hopefully it does actually encourage more people to do it who maybe hadn't done it. So we'll just see. That's also not live yet. I want to do one more pass tomorrow just to make sure it's all working right, and then I'll set it live tomorrow. It's also Saturday, so I didn't want to rub people the wrong way by sending them Saturday night at 10 notification to start. So figured I'd warm people up with that tomorrow. And then the other cool thing that happened, this actually got started on Friday, and I mentioned it in my kind of written one on Friday, but so kind of hype. So my sister is actually getting into UI UX, so she's learning Figma and everything, which is very cool because one of her kind of first projects can be helping us out with this as kind of like some real world experience. And she's actually super dope at it. And so one of the pieces of feedback we got from a user was how cool would it be? I think I mentioned this in the last update around like in the higher level intention, like a kind of planner aspect. So gave that to her as kind of a first pass, at some lo-fi's to see what could come up with. And it's actually, she kind of crushed the design of something, which I think would be really cool. So I am working on figuring out how to do that technically, which I think would be possible. It's basically just like kind of a planner tab. I'm not going to do it justice explaining it, but ideally, again, trying to keep things super simple. One thing I am thinking about with that, though, is that so what we ran into the first time, which I've mentioned a ton of times, is just kind of overbuilding, like putting in all the features we thought would be cool, whatever, and then it's just super confusing for users. So even if I build this planner aspect, I want to be very intentional about rolling it out. Honestly, no idea what that means. Whether that's like talking with users, whether it's rolling it out like very slowly, one feature at a time. Not really sure. But that is definitely something on the radar wanting to be very careful about, is not just like making it too confusing, because one of the coolest parts about it right now, I think, is the simplicity. Then the other piece of feedback, which was super dope, was basically this idea of making the feed more engaging by having some interaction there, which is a really interesting topic. Because it's something I was thinking about too, where I just see all these people's records and it would be really cool to engage with them. But the issue we could potentially run into there is basically creating an ecosystem where people are documenting and are just kind of chasing dopamine hits on likes and comments, which is essentially the exact thing that we're trying to do opposite of. Like, we want to build something that's just purely in your control, focusing on the process, all of that stuff, as kind of like a safe haven around the, dopamine on virality of TikTok. And so we do run the risk of introducing a dynamic like that where people just want likes and comments and interactions on their records and stuff. So I don't know. That's something we'll have to think about, because I'm sure there's a unique approach we can take that could kind of combine both aspects, where it doesn't really feel like you're chasing dopamine hits in the same way you are on other platforms, but it also does allow us to have a little bit more interaction. So I don't know. That's a really interesting one that we'll have to think a lot more about. But I mean, overall, just even me talking about it just then is like the thoughts that we're getting and the constructive comments on this beta test feel like, and maybe I'm just biased because it feels like we put more intention in this, but it feels like we're getting more feedback constructively than we were the first time, because we are being more intentional about this beta test. So that's a positive. So yeah, I'm actually hyped just thinking about it for this second notification. We'll see. We'll see kind of what it does this week, if it sparks anyone into action. the other thing to document here too is that I'm not getting a lot of inbound. Like I used to be getting like 3 to 5 inbounds on my TikToks, and I've been trying a new strategy where I've been doing like brand building ones, like just messing around with new formulas, which I do want to do, and also some artist sourcing content. And like for the past 2 days, I think I got no one, which is really interesting. I have seen this before where when I'm not in my setup in Denver, like my content recording setup, I typically don't get as much inbound. So I'm going to test it this week to see if I can get back to that 3 to 5 inbound by doing basically exactly what I was doing this summer. If it doesn't work, then we'll have to rethink some things. Because I do really want more artist testers on this. We have like 10 maybe, so it's still pretty small. So we need more peeps, and I need to source more through TikTok. So yeah, hopefully I can get my act together on that, or just evaluate how the old strategy does next week, and if it really needs changing, we can do that. So overall, solid day, following journey. I will catch you out tomorrow.